I'm sitting inside a Luckin Coffee right now in New York City, and I want to show you something. In less than 1 year since opening here, they already have over 12 locations. I mean, look at that. They're all over, with many more coming soon.
Now, here's what's even more crazy. Starbucks spent 26 years building 8,000 stores in China. Luckin Coffee did 30,000 stores in 8 years. And for 3 of those years, they were technically bankrupt. So what you're looking at is not a coffee company's story. This is much stranger than that.
So let's go up in your business, Luckin Coffee. Let me take you back to the beginning.
It's 2017. A woman named Jenny Xian sits down and asks a question. What if coffee worked like Uber? So no seating, no cashiers, just an app, and data collected on every single order. She builds Luckin Coffee, and it grows at a speed that no food business had ever really grown before. So by 2019, just a couple years in, they had more stores in China than Starbucks. They go public on the NASDAQ in the US at a valuation of $9 billion. Wall Street loves them. But then April 2020, they admit they made up over $300 million in revenue. The stock crashes 97% overnight. Executives are fired, and the company even gets delisted from the NASDAQ and files for bankruptcy. Now remember, at that time, Luckin had 0 locations in the US. It just listed its stock to raise capital here. But when Luckin went bankrupt, the fraud took out the founders and early investors. But everything that actually made the business run actually stayed completely intact. The app, the supply chain, the franchise agreements, the customer data, the operational playbook. So the fraud destroyed the people running the machine, but it didn't actually touch the machine itself.
And then what happened next is exactly why I'm sitting in this store right now.
New management comes in, restructures the debt, and inherits one of the most efficient food service operations ever built. Let me walk you through the numbers. Right now, Luckin has 33,000 stores around the world. Their revenue in 2025 was $7 billion. Every month, they have over 94 million customers ordering from them.
But here is the number that's just crazy.
Luckin's gross margin runs at around 56 to 60%. Compare that to Starbucks China, which is around 28 to 32%. So you have the same product, a similar customer, but double the margin.
So how is that possible?
Well, think of it like this. Luckin is actually a data machine that happens to sell coffee. Just think about what happens every time someone places an order. They open the app, pick a drink, pay, and pick it up. In general, in Luckin in China, there are no cashiers. There's either no seating areas or very limited, which means no wasted square footage. Every dollar Luckin spends touches either the coffee or the customer, and each transaction feeds data back into the system. So that data is telling the company which drinks are dying, which drinks to build next, and so much more. So when they launched the coconut latte, it drove 30% of all sales within months. When they launched a collaboration drink with Motai, the famous Chinese liquor brand, it sold over 5 million cups on the very first day.
Okay, now let's compare that to what an actual Starbucks location requires.
A large footprint, comfortable chairs, good Wi-Fi, a full team of trained baristas, and a carefully designed atmosphere. Remember, Starbucks is not necessarily selling coffee, they're selling a location, a vibe, a lifestyle.
Luckin stripped all of that out. I mean, this is the biggest store I can find in Manhattan right now, and it's still tiny, way smaller than any Starbucks.
Also, unlike Starbucks, Luckin has a franchise model. Franchisees pay up front, so Luckin collects cash while the franchisee takes on the operational risk. That combination is how you open over 8,000 new stores in a single year, but still stay profitable. And about that fraud scandal, what did that actually do to the business in the long run? Well, before the scandal, Luckin was growing on hype and cheap capital. After the scandal, they rebuilt on something else. The system that came out of bankruptcy was leaner, more focused, and a lot harder to compete with than the one that went in. The system was right, but people probably wrong. Before we move on, we need to talk about Starbucks, because you can't actually talk about Luckin without talking about Starbucks. See, China is historically a tea-drinking nation. In fact, Starbucks gets the credit in China for the concept of buying a cup of coffee outside of your house. The human body has limits, but for decades we've been trying to push past them. But most of that innovation happens quietly, behind the scenes, in labs, clinics, and private training rooms. We celebrate Olympic athletes, but what is the actual science behind the gold medal? So there's a company called called Enhanced that wants to bring that conversation into the open. And they're today's sponsor. They launched something called the Enhanced Games. It's a global competition where athletes are paid what they're actually worth, and where the science is transparent instead of hidden. So they're working with licensed doctors and medical professionals to explore what peak human performance really looks like in a controlled environment. But this isn't just about elite athletes. Their goal here is to take that same level of medical access, testing, and performance tracking and make it available to you and I through telehealth and consumer products. If you're training for a marathon or just trying to stay strong and healthy as you get older, the idea here is that people like you and me can benefit from the same kind of medical and data insight that pro athletes are getting. You can learn more at enhance.com or on the NYSE ENHA. Now, back to the video. So Starbucks created the coffee market when it first opened in 1999. It taught hundreds of millions of people to buy coffee the way Americans do, in a paper cup with your name on it, in a room with soft lighting and vibey music. And it worked so well that the former CEO once publicly said he could see a day where China would be a bigger market for Starbucks than the US. See, China was viewed as a growth opportunity given the urbanization of the population, a booming middle class, and just a big appetite for Western brands at the time. But Schultz's prediction never panned out because of Luckin Coffee. Right now, about 1 in 5 Starbucks around the world is in China. About 8,000 stores in China. That's less than half of what's in the US. The US and China make up 61% of Starbucks' overall store count. But even though China was supposed to be the growth engine, it actually became a problem. Here's what happened. Starbucks' share of China's coffee market went from 42% in 2017 to just about 14% by 2024, even though store count doubled. More stores, but less market share. But why is that? Well, a latte at Starbucks can cost close to $5. At Luckin, $2.25. See, Starbucks entered China as a premium aspirational brand, and for a while that premium held.
Luckin's model removes that completely.
But then Luckin shows up and Chinese consumers realize they can have good coffee for half the price. Starbucks same-store sales in China declined 14% in fiscal year 2024. They're trying to change. They're running free study spaces inside Chinese stores without requiring any purchases, free power sockets, no time limit, essentially turning their most expensive real estate into a free library just to get more people through the door. So more recently, Starbucks sees what Luckin is doing and then tries to copy it. They launched Starbucks Now, which is like a pickup version of smaller stores, no seating, designed for on-the-go customers, kind of like what Luckin is. The idea now is to compete on speed and efficiency while somewhat protecting the full experience elsewhere at other Starbucks stores.
But I want to be honest about what Luckin Coffee is actually up against right now in the US market.
Well, Luckin isn't even the only Chinese brand running this play in the US right now. You have Hey Tea, which is one of China's biggest premium tea chains, opening stores across the US, like in New York, LA, San Francisco. Chaggy is a milk tea brand I visited in LA. And there's also Mishui. I'll make an entire video about that one. That one is mostly cold drinks and ice cream. The formats on all of these are somewhat similar. Very specific, often tiny locations, fast pickups, app-first ordering, and aggressive pricing.
Here's the thing I want to leave you with. Starbucks sold a story, but Luckin is kind of just selling a system.
All right, so what are the 3 business lessons from Luckin? The first is that a great system actually can outlive the people who broke it. So that fraud wiped out the founders and the investors, but the app, the supply chain, and the customer data survived. New management inherited the company and scaled it to tens of thousands of stores. The second lesson here is strip out every cost that doesn't actually touch the product. Remember, very little seating, small stores. That's how you get 56 to 60% gross margin in a category where Starbucks is running at about 30%. Decide what you're selling, then cut everything else without mercy. And third, data beats intuition at scale. Every Luckin order is giving real-time feedback to the system. They knew the coconut latte would be a hit before it even launched because the data told them it would be. When you have 94 million monthly customers, that feedback loop compounds into an advantage that no human or executive can match.
Subscribe to this channel if you're new here. It helps me massively and it's free. And let me know in the comments which business should I go up in your business next.